Okay, so I've been buying and selling watches as a side gig since about June of 2023. Now, I stopped for most of 2024, but then I picked it back up again in the summer of 2025 this year. I've come to the conclusion that having the ability to polish a used watch that you're going to sell, it is an absolute must. Now, does it mean that every used watch needs to be polished? Well, no, of course not. But sometimes you do really need to polish a watch. And if you stay with me for just a few minutes, I'll explain why I bought this watch polisher here that I'm unboxing. Now, of course, if you've been in the watch community for any amount of time, you already know that this is sort of a controversial topic, right? Because not everyone wants a used watch that has been polished. Some people even say that a watch should never be polished. And I completely understand that because if you're buying a used vintage watch, well, you usually don't want that watch to have been polished, right? You would prefer that watch to be unpolished. And even if you're buying more of a modern watch, you don't want that watch to necessarily look like someone has done something unnatural to it. You certainly don't want the watch to look too shiny or deformed, indicating that it's been over polished. Really, all used watch buyers, all they want is for their watch to look to its original condition, as close as possible to its original condition, really. That's all people want when they're buying a used watch. That's really it. So, to trade watches, it obviously requires a lot of market research, which I've done a lot of that over the years, because you have to figure out which watches are in demand and why they're at different price points, so on and so forth. And when you do that, you have to determine what those watches sold for and the factors that affected the sold price. You have to do that in order to be able to buy and sell watches. And really, of all the factors involved, the condition of the watch determines where in the range of the values the watch will fall. That's the most important thing, the condition. And again, as I said, the closer the watch is to new or original condition, the higher the value will be. Now, in the used watch market, you really only find two types of sellers, right? The original owner of the watch, the person that bought it themselves, and someone working at some level of a professional dealer. Those are the only two parties that you'll see pretty much selling a used watch. Now, when I first started trading watches, I noticed that some of the more professional dealers consistently sold their watches that appeared to be in mint condition. Even watches produced 10 to 20 years ago, they were being sold in mint to like new condition, and I couldn't figure out how they were doing that. But after doing more research, I came to the obvious conclusion that most of these watches were, in fact, being polished to some degree. I also realized that the polishing that they were doing was so good that the watch looked like it hadn't been polished at all, but just in mint or very good, excellent condition. And these watches, they always sold for a significantly higher price than those with more noticeable scratches. In fact, the more scratches you could see on the watch, the lower the price would be. Because again, the condition is a major factor when determining what the watch was worth. So it was that research that led me to believe that polishing used watches was a necessary part of the trading process if I wanted to get top dollar for a watch that had moderate to even somewhat heavy use. Of course, if it has really heavy use, I won't buy the watch at all. But just moderate use with scratches, I would have to polish that watch if I wanted good money for that watch when reselling it. Now, on the other hand, my research did confirm that a bad polish was one of the fastest ways to drastically reduce the value of a watch. So, if a dealer wants to maximize their profits and guard against losing value on their watch, they need to make sure that if they need to polish a watch, it needs to be done by an experienced professional with a track record of producing excellent results. So, should you polish your watch? Well, if you think the scratches on your watch, they tell an interesting story, they give it character, then no, you definitely shouldn't polish your watch. Just wear it, enjoy it, leave it alone. Maybe you're not thinking about what it's going to sell for when you get ready to sell it. No, you're just wearing your watch. But if you want your watch to look almost new again after some time, or if you want to increase the market value of your watch, maybe you're thinking about selling your watch, well, then getting it polished might be a good idea. So why am I unboxing this bench polishing device here, polisher? What am I doing? Well, because I've decided to do whatever I need to do to learn to polish watches on a professional level. Because if I don't, I'll have no choice but to pay someone else to do it or sell some watches with significant scratches at a much lower value than desired. Now, of course, I know there may be some watchmakers watching this or some watch peers watching this, and they're thinking, this is an absolutely terrible idea. And if that's you, I completely understand. There's certainly a risk that I could make a complete mess of what I'm trying to do and lose some money in the process of it. But that's a risk that I'm willing to take. As we all know, risk is a part of life. Risk is a part of business. Yes, I may lose some money. I already know that, but I'm willing to do that in order to learn to polish watches well. But don't worry, I actually do have what I think is a pretty good plan of action, and I'll explain that idea or that plan in detail in my next video. So thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe if you like to follow along.